It is Obstructed View, the Obstructed View podcast with Matt Mosley. And it is the day after the election. And I understand that some of my audience is very pleased and happy. Probably some of our listeners are not. And if you think I'm going to delve into all that, you have come to the wrong podcast. All right, and I am one that just hope we can. Anyway, it just does not seem like a day to really get into any of that. So I'll do what I like to do, and that is talk about Baylor athletics, and we will have just hung up with Coach Nikki Collin, the Baylor women's coach, and so I do have some thoughts on how that team looks as they get ready to tip it off Thursday night. That's tomorrow night against Incarnate Word. I do think that's probably a better way to open the season. Is kind of ease your way into it at home. I think we were probably all excited. I'll start with the men, and then I will finish with the women, and we'll talk a little bit about their season and some of the things I just was talking to Coach Collin about. But I'll first say this: that was that was embarrassing. That was a beatdown. That's tough when you are a celebrated program like the Bears are, and you get beat 90 or excuse me 101-63 to start the season. Not the way we're used to seeing, not the way it should be. But again, rather it be that than toward the end of the season. And this has to be one of those moments. This has to be a in Scott we trust kind of moment. Let's think about it. He's brought in all these new assistants. I mean, you've got Steve Henson kind of running the offense, Bill Armstrong helping to run the defense, and Melvin Hunt comes in with an NBA background, former player at Baylor, and they join Jared Nunes, who's kind of the long time holdover of this staff, and then Tweety Carter has been promoted on this staff, and so I mean, you have everything. Again, on one hand, I appreciate Scott for playing a game like this. Start of the season, you need to have some attention on college basketball. It's hard, really, until the NFL wraps it up in February to get people's attention with college basketball. And so the only way to do it is to have like really good non-conference matchups. Now, you got to weigh that now, and that's an awesome two incredible programs that met in the national championship just 3 years ago in Baylor and Gonzaga. I don't really understand, especially when you got all these transfers now, and you got basically a new team, and you got new freshmen that you're working in, and the only holdovers you really have for Baylor is Jaden Nunn. Langston Love's not ready to go quite yet. As he comes back, that'll be helpful as he does. But I mean, you're plugging in all these new players, so you just don't have really any continuity, and you're playing against a Gonzaga team that brings back several players. Nimhard. I mean, you just go right down the line. Even Greg, who maybe didn't play quite as much in the past, has been in the program for several years. EK, I mean, this is just, these guys are stacked. And I don't think anybody thought it would be that big of a blowout, but it was bad. And I think we're happy that BJ Edgecombe had that slam on Coach Few's kid, because that's been shown everywhere. And in some ways, it sort of overshadows the game. Now, by Thanksgiving, or at least by, Christmas, as the Bears start to get ready for conference, which will be, New Year's Eve, something like that, this will all be forgotten. It's okay. But I mean, it's all we have right now. So I feel like we need to react to it, and some of it I can be optimistic about, some of it I can be cautious about. Let me just say this about VJ Edgecombe. It I knew something like this could happen. I knew he could get off to a slow start, and Trey Johnson, who I watched for years because he went to high school with my daughter, um, at Lake Highlands, I knew he could possibly go off, and he did for the University of Texas. And just to catch you up, those were the two players Baylor was choosing between. Um, and they love both of them. They were recruiting both of them. They went hardest at Trey, and then Trey waited a good while, and then he at the last minute picked the University of Texas. Baylor pivoted and got VJ Edgecombe, who actually in ESPN's rankings ended up being ranked higher than Trey. Trey is a scorer at every level. It'd be the same way in the NBA. Tremendous three-point shooter, explosive, great mid-range game. He is not as athletic as VJ. They're both potentially going to go in the top 5 of the NBA draft, at least top 7. Okay, in this first game, you saw a couple things from VJ. Yes, explosive. No, unlike Trey, he's not going to be perfect at, I mean, and first of all, they weren't really running that great of an offense. They were not getting open looks. I would say they did have some 3-point looks that were fine. Some were forced. I think in time, Jalen Celestine's going to be a nice help, and I think he'll be a really good 3-point shooter. I'm not worried about Jeremy Roach. He'll be a really good shooter. None of them could. None was 0 for 5. He'll be much, much better than that. So the shooting will come. All right, they were 3 for 21 from 3. That's bad. They've got to learn, and some of this will have to evolve, how to get VJ the ball, where he's in the best spots. He was 2 for 11 in that game. One was a massive dunk. He showed you he can finish. He's got great size. He's got great length, great athleticism. He can get to the rim. He had trouble in this game. They were walling it up, and he was not finishing, and maybe he wasn't getting the greatest of shots. Let me remind you that even early on, it took him a while to get Jacoby Walter. It's like we knew he was going to be really, really good, but like, how do you get him the best shots? How do you get him to be the explosive player that he could be? Keontae was he was a little more like Trey Johnson, who's now at Texas. Keontae was a walking bucket. He was explosive, but he also came with the ability to shoot it from deep, hit the three. Can VJ shoot the three? He can. Is he going to be the best three-point shooter on the team? No. In fact, he might be 4th or 5th. But I've seen players like this before come into college. I think back to, if I go way back, like to Kansas, had a guy named Ben McLemore, who was a extremely gifted. Wiggins was a little bit like this too. Andrew Wiggins, I can think of 2 Kansas players that were like this. And you'd be like, okay, I know they're supposed to be great. What are they going to do? When are they going to? And it just sometimes took them a while to either get into games or be featured. And McLemore, I'd watch him out there just hanging out in the corner, waiting for a pass. But then in time, sometimes their athletic gifts would just take over. So part of what this coaching staff will have to do is figuring out best how to use VJ. Now, what have they been doing since June? Well, they've been looking at it. But I mean, again, until you get out there and you start going against opponents, that's when you and they went into hostile territory, and that game just got away from them. They fought back a little bit with about 13 or 14 minutes left. I thought they showed some fight to get it back to 13, and then they get hit with another wave. This team is not 38 points worse than Gonzaga. Okay, that's not how this thing's going to look at the end of the season, but they were on that night. All right, let me look for a couple of positives as we sort of kind of get you ready. And by the way, It's a bye week for Baylor football. Who thought we would be sitting here like we were like, oh, I can't wait for basketball season? Well, basketball season has arrived, and football 3 weeks ago just flipped it on a dime. They beat Tech, they get some confidence, they win at home against Oklahoma State, and then they get a huge win at home against TCU. All right. I mean, we hadn't even addressed that, but that's changed the way we look at all of this. In some ways, that's kind of good for basketball in the sense that lets this team kind of do its thing. We'll watch the basketball team, but we still have great and huge interest in the football team. And it looks like Dave Aranda is going to keep his job. And it looks like this team has a path now to finish 8-4, as crazy as that sounds. At least 7-5. And this will be a tough game. They got to go to Morgantown. But anyway, we'll couch that because we are in a bye week situation, and we'll come back to Baylor football. But what a great outing that was. What a great finish. And I've loved talking about that all week. You can listen to me on ESPN Central Texas. I am on from 4 to 6 every day with Cam Stewart, and I think you would enjoy that, and Aaron Sexton. But on this podcast, I did want to break down specifically that game against Gonzaga the other night, as painful as it was. Let me grasp at a couple of positives. I would say that Rob Wright, another freshman, one of the best point guards in the country, coming off the bench, and we'll see where that goes. And they got to decide when Langston Love comes back. Maybe he'll play Saturday night against Arkansas. They play at the AAC, hoping for a big Baylor crowd there. That could be fun. Hopefully Bears get it going again. Rob Wright is smooth. He wasn't perfect in this game, but he can shoot it. He can finish. Has a little more. I thought of him as a smaller. He's been compared by some, even Fran Fraschilla on my show, kind of almost like as a Chris Paul type. And so in my mind, I was thinking of a real small guy. He's thick. He's already kind of he's fine physically. He can do what he needs to do. He was already finishing in this game, handles the ball great. And I thought he was one of the players. I thought VJ for his first, VJ's seen a lot, and he's played in a lot of great high school matchups, huge showcases. He was probably rattled, and he wasn't the only one in that game. But Rob Wright is, let me just put it this way. One has a higher ceiling, and that is VJ. One might be a more polished product right now, and that's okay. That's Rob Wright. There is some thought, and Fran Fraschilla told me this, that he could be an All-American at Baylor by next season. Not this season, but by next season. Certainly an All-Big 12 player. Whoa. So we think he's going to come back for at least a second year, maybe a third year. He's one of those guys that by his third year could be one of the best guards in the country. So that's fun. That's fun to think about. Celestine, it's really fun to watch him. He's got the shot, and he's going to be like a 40 to 43% three-point shooter. He has been in the past. I think he will be at Baylor. I think they'll get him good shots. And so imagine, Bridges. He's got that kind of size, maybe not that sort of athleticism, but he can come off the bench and give you some scoring pop. And Baylor performs best when either Langston, just think of some of the really tremendous 6 men that they've had over the years, and they've won the award for like 6 straight years or something crazy, or 6 or 7. They really had a long run of great, Bandu, I remember, would come in and hit a lot of threes and all that kind of stuff. And I just think that is something to watch. And I think he's going to be a nice player. I also think that Norchad Omier is a physically imposing player, and he had 15 and he fought. I think he'll be fine. This team's going to have some issues in a couple of areas. One, They don't have great size on the front line. I mean, Norchad is a awesome 6'7". I mean, he's a bang. He's going to bang a lot of guys around, and he can guard people that are bigger than him. But teams that have great size, like Texas Tech, I mean, Iowa State always has great size. Houston could give this team some problems in the area. I don't even know it's so much about. I think Baylor's going to be okay offensively because I think they'll open things up. They're going to get buckets in transition. They're going to turn you over. They're not as horrible as they looked from a defensive standpoint the other night. They'll get way better in that area. They're not going to be a great rebounding team. I think they'll give the effort. I hope they'll block out. I think there are a couple of guys that could be good offensive rebounders, but this is not one of Scott's best offensive rebounding team. What I hope it is, and of course it wasn't on opening night, 3 for 21 is not good. I hope it's a really good shooting team, good defensive team that'll turn you over and get some steals, and a team that protects the ball. The other night, they got rattled early, and I mean, they had 4 or 5 turnovers before you get off the bus. But they settled down. They only had 9 turnovers the rest of the game. So they took care of it. They didn't score. And they didn't stop anybody. So, again, ugly. In a perfect world, you wouldn't get completely exposed on national TV to start the season. But it's happened. What are you going to do? I mean, there's like 33, 34 games between now and the tournament, the Big 12 tournament. And then, of course, the big tournament. So it's totally fine. I just think you don't want to overreact, but you also, you see some issues that need to be dealt with. And you're going to have to get VJ going and figure out the best way to use him. Again, probably not the best way to roll out a new look team is with Gonzaga on the road in Spokane. That's not a true, I mean, it's not in any world. That's not a neutral site game. Now, Dallas against Arkansas, that is a neutral site game, closer to Baylor, but Arkansas has always traveled, and they love coming to Dallas, and so we'll see. I don't know how they'll show up, but there'll be plenty of Razorbacks fans there, and Bears need to show up. I could see some fans watching that result the other night and going, I don't know. I mean, do I really want to go spend some money and come at the last? But come on, it'll be fun. It's in Dallas. It'll be great. Baylor's not playing football that day. There's a lot of cool stuff that is associated with this game. Cowboys play the next day. Nobody wants to watch them right now because they're 3-5, and I'm paid to watch them, so I have to. So I'll continue to bring you Cowboys news. Check out our Doomsday podcast that I do with Ed Werder. I think I would like to encourage you to all do that. And further on what this team needs to clean up. Obviously, they just have to get the offense going and to be cleaner and to move the ball crisper, get better shots. They were not taking great shots. It did turn into a big ISO game. They've got to move it. They have guys that can. I think Roach, a good passer. Rob Wright, obviously, tremendous passer. I think Nunn's a willing passer. Again, Langston Love will bring a measure of toughness. If you're looking for somebody the other night to put one of those little guards, what was that guy's name? Hillis or Hollis or what? I mean, I'm going to have nightmares about these guys. Stromer, some of these Gonzaga. I mean, somebody that was just traipsing through the lane needed to end up in the stands the other night. There needed to be more level of force. There needed to be more effort. Needed to be more toughness. Langston Love, as he works his way back, will bring that. He's been described as day-to-day. He's been cleared for practice. I think they're being extremely cautious with Langston Love. Do I think he'll play against Arkansas coming up Saturday? I do not. But going to be a 6:30 tip-off. That's going to be a lot of fun. Playing in the NBA arena and playing in a place where Baylor should show up. Um, I just think you have to trust this staff and understand that they are transitioning from a lot of the concepts that they had with John Jacobs, who is now with FAU, and these are going to be, now I'm not saying they won't lose, they're not going to lose all their European ball screen type things. I mean, Steve Henson is a very, very accomplished and recognized offensive coach. They'll be fine, but they did not execute, and they just simply weren't ready for prime time. I said that early in the season about DeQuan Finn and the Baylor offense. They went out there and weren't ready to go. Well, look at them now. They're 5-4 and one of the hottest teams in the conference, and everything has changed. So I don't think we need to go. I do not think when you have a team that constantly is in the top 10 and won a national title, and you have a coach like Scott, who, Kentucky was desperately trying to get away. You don't. It's, again, for a program of this caliber, that is embarrassing to have that happen. But I've seen them get annihilated before and come back with a lot of pride and come back and be ready to go. They've gone to Milwaukee to play Marquette. They got crushed a couple of years ago. They've gone to they've gone to Detroit to play Michigan State. Got crushed. Michigan State was kind of barely a tournament team. Okay, not great. Izzo, obviously a great coach. They go to play Mark Few. They got run off the court. I mean, I think we have enough of a trend that I think it's okay to say no to one of these games in the future. One of these so-called neutral site games. You don't play Michigan State and Detroit or wherever that game was. You don't do it. You don't do it in their own territory that early in the season. Now that game was tracking a little bit more later in November or maybe even in December when that happened. So maybe that one was even more concerning to me. But because Michigan State had gotten off to a really bad start, we thought the Bears were better than they were. Bears will be fine. There's as much talent on this team as we've seen assembled maybe since the championship year. I mean, it's deep and there's talent. There are flaws because they just aren't a tall team. There's just not a lot of length on this team. There's, Ajan Wina can come in and play some different positions and rebound. He's not going to knock anybody down. He's an okay shot blocker, okay rim defender. Norchad did block a shot the other night. VJ can block shots. He did it the other night. Very impressive on a big man that came in. This team is very capable on defense. It did not look like it the other night, but they did not rebound. There were second chance points, and Gonzaga. Now they ended up like 13 for 31 or something, but at one point it was like 50% from three. It was like 13 of 26 at 27. They just missed a few at the end, but I mean, that needs to be what Baylor ends up with. That's the kind of nights Baylor needs to be having is 13 threes, 10 to 13 threes. I mean, that's how Baylor functions best. 3 for 21, hard time overcoming. And we saw it too many times last season that, it's like, oh, man, we're not hitting threes. Well, let's now start, getting some paint touches. Well, maybe sometimes you need to get those paint touches first and then start getting some of those easy shots, either second chance, throw it back out, or in transition threes, whatever. But trying to catch up in that game by launching a bunch of threes was not working. And Scott did everything he could, but he couldn't get the team's attention. And they showed a little bit of fight for about 6 or 7 minutes, and then they succumbed to an avalanche. Again, Gonzaga may be a Final Four team. They look great. I hope they are, by the way. Bears have plenty of time to get this together. All right. We'll have more on the women as the year as things move forward. But I did talk to Nikki Collin today, and man, the team picked up another transfer. I mean, I don't even know how this works. Apparently, she called, according to Nikki, Aaliyah Malaro. I'm going to have to work on that one. Matharo. Yeah, Matharo. Anyway, she was at Florida and was averaging like 20 a game. Was at Texas before that. Played really well there. Was at Mississippi State there. So well traveled. Has one season left and decided to come play for the Bears. Will not be ready to go until the second semester, until conference starts. But my goodness, I mean, you get like a unbelievable shooter, passer. She gets a ton of steals. Like, I don't know why she's transferred a bunch, but she's been an incredible player everywhere she's been. And she was one of the best players in the SEC, the mighty SEC. She had 35 against Vanderbilt. So, that, again, this is going to be somebody that helps them, that shows up, and will be a tremendous complimentary player. We talked about the fact that they have Aronette Vonleh. Her brother was an NBA lottery pick several years ago. I used to watch him. I think he played for the Trailblazers for a little bit. Pretty good player, like a pretty good defensive player, long guy. I mean, has a lot of length and not great, but pretty good, pretty decent career. Nettie, as they call her. So this is a more of a traditional Queen Egbo. Go back to Kalani, Lauren. Go back to some of the great players from the past. This is a 6'3", shot blocking, tough, throw it down low. And so since June, Coach Collin was talking to us about, I mean, they've been having to learn how to feed the post. And they've had post players and post, but they had like threes trying to post up down there. Threes and maybe, kind of small fours. And now they have a true big presence. And it's going to be this is a center capable of going for like 17 and 10 pretty much every night. I don't know if she'll do that, but she's very capable of that. So this is kind of an old school, what Kim used to have. And so this will be a hybrid where Nikki is going to have to, they'll be getting the ball to the post. But then what I think it'll do is she's going to take up so much attention. She's going to be firing the ball out. And so you're going to have a lot of open looks. So I think this is going to be it's going to be a great situation because I think she's shown that she is a willing passer. She's a good finisher. But some of these just unbelievably big Sedona Prince, the woman from the young lady from Iowa State, Audie Crooks is, I believe, her name. Hannah Gusters, who used to be at Baylor years ago, is in the conference. I mean, these are all like 6'3", 6'5", 6'7" in Sedona's case. I mean, like huge centers. This conference now has like 5 or 6, just like, huge women that are extremely tough to defend. And I think it's exciting that Baylor has one. And so they'll get started against Incarnate Word tomorrow night, depending on when you're listening to this. That'll be Thursday night at 7 o'clock at Foster Pavilion. And that'll be exciting. Everybody will show up, hopefully a big crowd for that. And then they'll go to Oregon. They'll take a trip soon after that and go to Oregon. Oregon's always a team that has known for tremendous players and teams and coaches. And so, I don't totally know what to expect from them, but we did talk to Nikki, and they've brought some folks. They've turned over their entire roster, and they've brought in some talented people. We know it's a tough environment, so it'll be a good early test for the Baylor women. Again, I think I think this team right now, I could see them. They made a Sweet 16 last year for the first time in like 4 seasons, 3 or 4 seasons, and to me, there's talent. And now Nikki's been here long enough, and there's some continuity with Little Page Bugs, Fauntleroy, Sarah, of course, Jada, Jana. I mean, it just goes on and on. There is enough continuity with this team that I think an Elite Eight or a Final Four is not completely. Of course, a lot of that's going to be the draw you get and all of that, but could be a really good team. Good guards, great shooters, great ball handlers, and finishers and rim runners. Little Page Bugs had 25 the other night in her sleep. She didn't have to do that every night, but totally capable of that. Bella Fauntleroy, tremendous scorer, great from outside. I mean, this is a high caliber Baylor team that is kind of stacked and is starting to look like some of the old days. So it's going to be fun, and it's a new look. Obviously they do things differently, but a little bit of an old school feel with a dominant center. Now, last thing I had for you, just on the Baylor football. Josh Cameron just got named. He's a finalist for the Burlsworth Award, which is the greatest former walk-on in the country. What a tremendous story. And I mean, Baylor has a couple of them. Caleb Parker plays a ton now. He was a walk-on, and he's become a tremendous contributor for Baylor at every level. And it's just pretty neat that, in fact, I'm going to talk this afternoon to David Wetzel, who now is Baylor's executive in charge of the B Association and all that, but he used to be in charge of the walk-ons. And he's a great friend, and I think that'll be fun to visit with him on. Now, Baylor found a way the other night. They were having trouble covering. They couldn't slow TCU down, and yet it was the old adage: last team with the ball wins. And Dave Aranda put it all on the line. I mean, you can't accuse him. There was one point early this season against Iowa State. He was like punting in the second half, and it just didn't feel great. It felt like kind of like, this thing's over. And I thought in that game the other night, it was kind of like a push all your chips in kind of deal. 4th and 9, close to midfield. I guess in their 44-yard line to TCU, and he goes for it. And then you get the trig, and then they get a run that puts them in position, and Isaiah Hankins hits the field goal. And I mean, it was awesome. And so it was incredible atmosphere. Students rushed the field, and I had no issue with that. Oh my gosh, I've been waiting on something like that, been waiting on a moment like that. And I had people texting me, "Why do you rush the field against ECU?" Well, it's not so much about like what they're ranked this year. It's about what this rivalry represents. It's been a long time since Baylor's beaten them. You have to go back to 2019, and almost that was kind of a miracle field goal to go into overtime, as I recall. And TCU had won 8 of the last 9. So it was a big breakthrough. Had no issue with the students getting out there having a fun time. Derek Smith, the Baylor PA man, and the voice of the Baylor women's basketball and baseball. Derek tried to get them to stay off the field, but I don't think he tried that hard. He gave kind of a half-hearted warning to them, and then they rushed the gates. And but everybody was safe out there. They didn't try to take the field goal away. Didn't try to take the uprights, so everything was good. I think one time those things went on a march to campus. That was beat Texas circa 1997 or 98 or something. And I think the goalpost ended up being marched down. Well, it was the old stadium, so would have been Dutton, then made a right there and made it to campus with a field goal. So Bears football in great shape. Men's basketball will bounce back. I'll be there to document what happens against Coach Cal in Arkansas. I'll be reacting to that, of course, on Obstructed View. And for my man, Josh, and all my friends, and Mike and Corey and the whole gang, and shout out to our man, Zach from Rogue Media Network, who has a new arrival. In fact, young Jack has entered the world. So, to Zach and his wife, well, we continue to think about you guys and are very excited for you as you take young Jack home. And what a neat time, what an exciting time in the life of Zach and the whole Rogue Media Network family. All right, that is that is it for Obstructed View. I am Matt Mosley. We will see you soon.
We are Rogue Media Sports.